Good day. I am Connor Moran, Assistant Professor of Occultism and Mystical Study with the Arcanum. It is my absolute pleasure to be recording these lectures about the so-called Disparate Alliance. Much of the information we have on these groups is a mix of hearsay, and I must admit, some conjecture on our parts. This alliance, as it is known, is a new phenomenon, but the occult orders we are describing are anything but. No. In truth, many of these are ancient cultural traditions. What is most interesting is that these once individualistic and private organizations have now begun working with one another. The exact reason for their alliance is arcane to us. Perhaps there has been a recent assault upon them by governments afraid of terrorism. What we have on that point is purely conjecture, though, so I will allow you, my students, to attempt to ferret out the truth, present a few papers, perhaps, on different possible reasoning. We shall start with the Ali Batin. The Batini are one of the oldest mystical orders in the world. Though they currently adhere strongly to Islam, their origins are earlier than that religious tradition. If one were to trace the origins of their order, you would find many connections between them and what would eventually become the Order of Hermes. Order and the craft masons even can thank their existence to traditions that can be traced, with difficulty, to ancient Batini works. What is troublesome, for the academic, is that most Batini texts have disappeared over the ages. In the penultimate work, the Mushaf al-Isra, of which we owned one of very few copies, has recently been stolen from our Nairobi chapter house. The Ali Batin are called the subtle ones, because I believe they shift and change the world through small changes designed to bring the world towards some great goal or end. The earlier history of the Batini is complicated, but we'll try and keep it simple in this introductory lecture. In the centuries before the Common Era, the Batini were engaged in a great battle. During this battle, a being known as the Khwaja al-Akbar arose. The Batini believed this entity achieves something they call unity, and much of their doctrine surrounds an attempt to once more reach this special state of grace. Around the time of the first millennium CE, the Ali Batin were faced with the challenge of infernalism within their ranks. This led to a negative reputation for the order amongst other mages. The Batini also claimed to have influenced, or at least understood, the precepts of Islam prior to Muhammad's revelations. During the 19th century, the Batini were engaged in a battle with the so-called Technocratic Union, a group of scientists and mechanists who wanted to rob the Batini of their sacred site, Mount Kaf, a place that was, as they understand it, a physical representation of unity on Earth. This order was one of the founding members of the so-called traditions of mystical mages. For hundreds of years they held the seat of correspondence, but in the early 20th century they discarded their place upon these councils. I believe the Batini fled the traditions because of a threat to a magical working they had created, which they call the Web of Faith. This appears to be a mystical collaboration designed to protect the Middle East from infernalist forces. In recent years, they've become the head of this Disparate Alliance, making connections, which seems to be their specialty. With the other organizations, we're going to be discussing them later in future lectures. So let's discuss their structure and beliefs briefly. The Batini are highly organized and structured. They have 5 lodges known as Kanakas. Each teaches a slightly different form of their doctrine of unity. The Batini tend to use incantations to enact their magical effects. Paired with concepts of sacred geometry, mathematics, and numerology, the Ali Batin gain the ability to warp space and time. The majority of their members are Muslim, or at least believe that their form of correct beliefs are reflected within Islam. They appear to be the leaders of the Disparate Alliance, as I mentioned before, and from our field reports, it appears that the Batini have been seeking out various magical traditions that have, before this, previously shied away from joining the traditional council or any other grouping of mages. We've received a few short messages, images, and videos that seem to indicate they think some sort of great event is about to occur. They don't appear to be worried, angry, or scared. Instead, the Bettini are said to be excited and smiling about whatever it is that is about to occur. Well, that's all I have for now. In the future, we'll be talking more about the other groups within the Disparate Alliance. If you have any questions, students, please reach out to me. I also recommend that you look through the chapter house to find some texts on the Bettini, to work through them and begin working on some of those essays I mentioned before. We'll speak to you soon.